Well, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Um, this is our work with the treatise on cosmic fire in depth. Sometimes I wonder how we can ever avoid depth when we're dealing with such a book as this. Um, and we're just moving along, seeing what we can learn and what we can correlate. Um, as you know, we've been beginning with the second of the great invocations. Uh, Given the turbulent state of the human psyche at the present time, and the attempt, and sometimes the successful attempt, by the Lodge of Darkness to throw glamour over those consciousnesses, or the consciousnesses of so many people, and in general, the target is the consciousness of humanity. So we invoke great shambolic powers, doing our little bit to help concentrate that which will inspire people to see through the glamour. Tonight we do have continuing work with glamour on GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar at no. Let's see. Maybe we don't have that tonight. I'm sorry. I think,
No,
Michael, we don't have that tonight
the
because of
glamour
the.
webinar has been postponed because of the new moon
Oh,
meditation that
okay.
begins at 6:30 p.m. GMT.
Okay. Well, I'm glad I mentioned it. And what I will do then is during the new moon meditation, uh, I will make some reference to it. And the new moon meditation, is that on Zoom, Michael, or is that a broadcast?
That is on Zoom, yes.
That is on Zoom. Okay, thank you. So let us together do invocation number 2 as we concentrate upon our inner esoteric defensive work. Let the lords of liberation issue forth. Let them bring succor to the sons of men. Let the rider from the secret place come forth, and coming save. Come forth, O mighty one. Let the souls of men awaken to the light, and may they stand with massed intent. Let the fiat of the Lord go forth. The end of woe has come. Come forth, O mighty one. The hour of service of the saving force has now arrived. Let it be spread abroad, O mighty one. Let light and love and power and death fulfill the purpose of the coming one. The will to save is here. The love to carry forth the work is widely spread abroad. The active aid of all who know the truth is also here. Come forth, O mighty one, and blend these three. Construct a great defending wall. The rule of evil now must end. Now, of course, when this was used, there was not a question about the coming forth. The coming forth did not mean yet the appearance of the Christ upon the physical plane. As a matter of fact, maybe that was not even decided until, I think, perhaps 1943, and this was given out in 1940, nor do we expect that his coming forth right now would be upon the physical plane. I think we're going to have to wait until we reach a point when the sixth ray and Piscean energies have disappeared. That's about 100 years from now. But it can mean a greater attention and a real focus on the part of the Christ to prepare and to come to the aid also of those who are attempting to prepare for his coming, because there's a tremendous resistance against his reappearance engineered by the Lodge of Darkness. So the coming forth is an energy factor and not necessarily an immediate reappearance factor. And then, of course, we're participating in the making of the Guardian Wall, as it has been called, and here it's called a Great Defending Wall. This is one of the ways that the hierarchy protects humanity. Putting that wall of energy between the Lodge of Darkness and humanity in general, not completely, but enough to at least protect. Otherwise, as Master Moria said, we would easily fall prey to those forces. And he said, interestingly, he said, later you will see how we protected you. So that's, we don't doubt him. That mode will be revealed to us. I'd like to welcome you this morning here anyway, and for some quite late, I know. So Michael and I are here, and Michael knows the schedule. Is helping us all with his weekly calendars in many ways. Tuya is here, and welcome, and Veronica, Anna, Annette, Catherine. Looks like Donaldo Seidel, welcome, and G. Galanis, welcome, Karen, Leslie, Martine, Miro, Nesa, Risto, Raz, Sri Yanka, or Yantra Veronica, excuse me, Sri Yantra Veronica, Vera, and Zenaidi. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for being here, and some of you braving the hour. I was discussing with Michael before long when here in Europe we go back on normal standard time. Our morning sessions will be taking place at 6 a.m. and not 5 a.m. GMT. We'll be notifying you about that as we go. Now we're beginning a new section here, and let's see if I can get this straight. I always like to have one of those little brackets, because they are very helpful, and when trying to point out or isolate some particular sentence that may be of value to remember. Okay, I think that'll do it. So this is about fire in the microcosm, and we've been, now basically the difference between the two, right? Anything bigger, any larger system in which we live and move and have our being, that is considered, compared to us as little human beings, the macrocosm. But we live in a number of macrocosms, and the one that is usually considered relevant to that name is the solar system itself and the system, of the solar logos. From another point of view, our planetary scheme is a kind of macrocosm compared to man as the microcosm, but usually it is the solar logos and his system. And then we become less and less significant as we move to those macrocosms, which are a cosmic logos and a supercosmic logos, and maybe eventually a galactic logos and his system of billions or even trillions of stars. That's an immense macrocosm, but it's not very relevant to us because we have a much smaller scope. It's relevant to such a macrocosm as the solar system. Then the galaxy becomes really relevant. So we're dealing basically with humankind here as the microcosm. And he says, let us briefly consider, therefore, the correspondence between the greater whole and the unit man, and then block out our subject in detail and consider the sections into which it would be wise to divide it. Well, you can certainly see that Master DK is, as one would expect of a master, is trained also upon the fifth ray and the seventh ray. So the analysis is keen and the organization is keen. Hierarchy, we remember, is the society of organized and illumined minds. And I've said here that we think we know man, the microcosm, best when compared to the other three atoms under discussion. Now, under discussion in cosmic fire, there are bigger atoms hinted at, and maybe some smaller, but the atoms that are discussed comparatively in cosmic fire are the atom of substance, the man, the atom, the planetary atom, the planetary scheme, and then the solar systemic atom. Those are the four that are discussed, three of them in relation to man. So we can analogize from one atom to the next. And if we, I know you know this, but it doesn't hurt to remind that if we know something about one of those atoms, we can analogize to the same type of factor in another atom about which we don't know anything. And knowledge will appear based upon the atom in which we do know something. I hope I'm being clear there. If I know something about man and I'm missing that corresponding something in the solar logos, I might be able to analogize on the basis of what I know about man to that larger atom. So fire in the microcosm, man, is likewise threefold in essence and fivefold in manifestation. I think without me saying anything, you would be able to know what is meant here. So the triangle, but I'll just say it anyway, the triangle represents the essence, the three types of fire by friction, solar fire, and electric fire. And the 5-pointed star so far are these three fires in manifestation. We split the fire by friction upon the etheric and dense physical planes. It's all considered the physical plane, really, but we split it. Now let's see if I'm yeah. And then we split the mental fire between higher and lower fire. Both involve Agnishvatas, but of different types. And one is the realm of the soul, and one is the realm of the personality mind. So we split that one too, with the two middle points of the pentagram, and then we have, for the time being, a kind of a unitary fire, which is electric fire, and which is not yet split. But in the future, maybe, I don't know, towards the end of this solar system, or certainly into the next, it will be split, and I think we'll be dealing with two kinds of stars, 6-pointed and even 7-pointed. So the triangle is the essence, and the 5-pointed star is manifestation. The essential fires are threefold, yes, and the two lower fires are considered dual, and that produces the 5. Now 5 is a number associated with manifestation because it relates to the 5 planes of Brahma. Now, if I were to ask you, what are the 5 planes of Brahma? Let's make sure that I'm, I have to switch around here. They are these 5 cosmic subplanes. These are the 5 planes of Brahma. And if I was to maybe blow that up a little bit, these 5 planes, atmic, buddhic, monastic, kamic, and physical, etheric physical. So the great Rajadeva Lord Brahma is found here, and he brings the outer form into existence and was very powerful in the previous major solar system, but now is being overcome by the Lord Vishnu, who is superior to the 5. Vishnu Surya. Surya means sun. Now, in some of the secret doctrine preparatory books, there's a book that apparently has come down from Atlantean times, written by a great giant, literally a giant, but a giant in astrology. His name was Asura Maya, Asura Maya, and it's called the Surya Siddhanta. And it's quite an amazing astrology book from millions of years ago. And the name Surya there basically means sun. And we really begin to have a new relationship with our solar logos once we reach the monadic plane, this one. Because the monad, we're told in Initiation Human and Solar, is that which has its home within the sun, at least temporarily so. So, we try to enter the realm of Surya, who is also Vishnu. Vishnu, the great second ray deity in the Hindu Trimurti of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. So somehow, when we are tuning in on monadic energy, we're tuning in on heart energy, considering that our great solar logos is a heart, a very powerful heart center within a cosmic logos, whose system is called the 7 solar systems, of which ours is one. So the wisdom has been around a long time, and maybe was brought to this earth from the inner parts of the planetary logos's being, Shambhala, or at least what became Shambhala in relation to the outer plane. And when we do our work with identification as being, we're actually seeking the kind of energy which is revealed when we understand that we are the monad and we do have our place essentially within the sun, or shall we say within the solar logos. So anyway, Vishnu is different from Brahma. So 5 is the number associated with Brahma. 7 is the number for our solar system associated with Vishnu Surya, and 9 will be the number for the next solar system of Shiva. Now you add all that together and you get 21, 579, and then unitize the entirety and get 22, which is the magical number with respect to our solar system, at least now, with its second ray soul and its second ray personality, 2, 2. And Brahma, its number being 5, is still qualified by the third aspect and the third ray. So in the microcosm, let's maybe say a little bit more about these fires. There's what's called internal vitalizing fire. Internal vitalizing fire. And sometimes, when we feel hot or cold and warm or chilled, we're talking about this particular fire, which relates to the body and to the ether. It's the correspondence in the microcosm to fire by friction, not to solar fire, not to electric fire. And this is, interestingly, the sum total of individual Kundalini. Kundalini is the light, the fire within matter, of the dense kind and of the etheric kind. Kundalini is not per se a mental fire, and though the mind can be involved in its evocation, and it's not electric fire, though definitely electric fire can be involved in its evocation as it is summoned to rise and vitalize. Kundalini rises and vitalizes when the time is right. And the time is right as determined by the monadic ray and by the general progress of the individual. Kundalini animates the corporeal frame, the normal body structure of which the etheric body is part. It animates the corporeal frame and demonstrates also in a threefold manner. So we'll get to that. It says, we note that individual Kundalini is not only a fire related to the dense liquid and gaseous physical planes, but also to the etheric plane. So bear that in mind. It has to do with dense physicality of man, but also with his etheric nature. And then, looking at the map, obviously, this is the way to look at it, that Kundalini involves the dense physicality of gaseous, liquid, and really dense, and also the four ethers of this lower systemic solar plane, they're called. All of these subplanes, they're all called solar planes from one perspective. They're called systemic planes. And they're also called cosmic subplanes on the cosmic physical plane, cosmic subplanes. Every one of our normal planes is a cosmic subplane also. Okay. So one of the great mysteries regarding the constitution of our cosmic physical plane is why the physical and mental planes should be divided, whereas the astral is not. But maybe you know the answer to that. We do not know whether higher planes are divided to the same extent, and maybe not yet. As I said, there will be an issue regarding the monadic plane and how individualization occurs in the next solar system. I think there will be a division there. And already, even now, when he talks about the monadic plane and its subplanes, he seems to differentiate between the four higher and the three lower. So they certainly aren't divided now, at least in any way we can register. Although activity on the three higher subplanes of, for instance, the monadic is referenced, well, 3 and 4. The monadic subplanes, he talks about 3 and 4 and the movement around of monads to the different subplanes, depending on their ray and their readiness. So maybe this is true, that there's certainly on every one of these cosmic subplanes that we call solar planes, there is an etheric portion and there is a dense portion. The etheric portion contains the vortices of fire, of which there are 49 in the completed man of the 7th degree, 42 in the Chohan of the 6th degree, 35 in the master. And I suppose the Arhat has 28. Something like that. So always the upper part of one of these planes, our normal planes, are the more vital. Okay. And we're just now beginning to get into our vitality, which is going to be one of the great themes of the Aquarian age, since Aquarius, along with Gemini, rules the etheric body. So the very age itself puts an emphasis upon the etheric body. Now, with individual Kundalini, it animates the corporeal frame and demonstrates in a twofold manner. And this is the important part. First, it demonstrates as latent heat, which is the basis of life of the spheroidal cell or atom, and its rotary adjustment to other cells. It's quite physical. And then it also demonstrates as active heat or prana. So the internal vitalizing fires demonstrate as latent heat and as active heat. And this kind of active heat or prana, it animates all, says the Tibetan, and is the driving force of the evolving form. And, therefore, somehow the driving energy of the rising sign must be connected with this active heat. It propels us forward. He uses the word driving in esoteric astrology to talk about the soul and the rising sign. It shows itself in the four ethers and in the gaseous state, and that's something interesting we'll come to. Not just the ethers, but that middle range where breathing exercises become effective in this use of the transitional plane, the gaseous subplane. And a correspondence is here found on the physical plane in connection with man to the Akasha and its fivefold manifestation on the plane of the solar system. So there's something about, the active heat and the Akasha. The Akasha is driving the world of Brahma forward. Akasha is found on plane number 6 from below, plane number 2 from above, and it drives Brahma. So we've said a few things there. And here, right in the book, is, everything in a few sentences. The latent heat and the active heat or prana, both of which are internal vitalizing fires. DK is such an outliner. So we, as clear as we can be regarding his outlines, it's a good policy to be as clear as we can be regarding his outlines. Now, going back, maybe a few things can be said. So internal vitalizing fires, get that straight. They have to do with the physical solar plane, physical systemic plane, what we normally call our etheric physical plane, divided into two. The internal vitalizing fires operating first as latent heat on the cellular level, and then later as active heat on the etheric level. And the earliest initiation in Lemurian times involved an adjustment between these two. And later, we've come to refer to something known as, in the microcosm, the Lemurian initiation, the Atlantean initiation, the Aryan initiation. We're basically talking about initiations 1, 2, 3, which are somehow microcosmic reflections of that which did take place a long time ago in the root race initiations. So the Lemurian initiation was a root race initiation, many types having taken that initiation, and now most every human being having been through that, has the necessary adjustment between the etheric and the dense physical, between active heat and latent heat. Now, so again, repeating, the internal vitalizing fire. Okay, so let's see. Internal. Nope. Vitalizing fire showing as two types of heat, latent and active. Just to, kind of get that straight and keep it in one's mind. Now, this is all such foundational material. I realize that so many of us are more interested in psychology per se, and we're dealing with the foundation of the psychology. But remember, A Treatise on Cosmic Fire is the psychological interpretation of the secret doctrine. So he sees fit to include it. All of this apparently quite physical description. So internal vitalizing fires demonstrate as latent heat, the basis of the life of the spheroidal cell or atom, and its rotary adjustment to all other cells. So he seems to be kind of equating spheroidal cell and atom, but there might be, quite a difference in scope as well. Usually, in human science anyway, the cell is a much larger structure, of course, having molecules and atoms as part of it. Much larger structure than the atom. Nevertheless, we have to notice how these terms may be used in occultism. Spheroidal cell or atom. So it's either plus the atom or as the atom, either one. And from a certain point of view, the human being is a spheroidal cell, the human atom. Are we speaking, though, of the atoms within the human body or the human body as a spheroidal cell? If man as a whole is considered a cell or atom, we must question wherein lies the rotary motion of man, at least on the dense physical level. Well, we we know that the astral body rotates. We know that the mental body rotates, the causal body rotates, and many of these higher, more spheroidal or ovid-like structures, they rotate on their own axis, and they have a certain rate of rotation. But we can't say that about the dense physical body. And I don't think we can say that about the etheric body. I'm saying here that maybe we're not aware of the slow rotation of the physical body or of the etheric, but they appear, more static. The etheric body built point for point upon the physical, or at least, or maybe the reverse is even more true. But there seems to be kind of a one-to-one correspondence of dense physicality and etheric physicality. And this word rotary adjustment, that is an interesting term. It's significant, I think. Probably the various rates of rotation found from one atom to another are really adjustments as atoms adapt to each other in their own world, just the way we, in our a bit more macrocosmic world when compared with the atom, we adapt to each other. And it would seem that they would change their rates of rotation, or maybe they are fixed. At least part of man is rotating all the time. And if we knew the internal cycle, we would know the rate of rotation, and we would know the duration of rotation, and we might find that we could correlate some of this inner rotation of, let's say, the astral body, mental body, and other bodies with what's going on in the progressed horoscope or the directed horoscope. There's another wheel, it's in motion. The horoscopic wheel is kind of in motion and maybe is correlating with these rates of rotation. We're always told, about how the wheel that we are studying turns faster in a new cycle. And so maybe there's a differentiation in this rate of rotation given the quality of different human beings. And I just want to say, can we correlate these rotational adjustments with the moving, progressing, directed horoscope? It's a question, and eventually I think it will be answered. Of course, the planet says they are progressed a day for a year, or 1 degree a year, all of them in astrological directions. There's two kinds of things: progression, a day for a year, and then the next one is solar arc, directing all the planets forward by the same little increment. And there are other methods of directing too, but they all, seem to move the same way in every horoscope. And yet we would be looking, I think, for connections between internal rotation and what's going on in the horoscope. So for we human atoms, and we meet other human atoms, maybe our rotary spin is either hastened or slowed. You kind of wonder, going through cycles faster. We meet a master, we meet a high initiate. Things begin to speed up in our lives. Maybe there's actually an outer subtle rotation that speeds up as we quicken in the presence of a higher initiate or master. So, we're dealing with internal motions. We don't know much about it yet, but we can speculate that these internal adjustments of atom to atom, cell to cell, are variable. And that the keener and more alive we are, the more rapid, perhaps, is our internal rotation. And I would say that, probably some of the measuring of these internal rotations, even if we, for a moment, we set aside the question of does the etheric body in some way rotate, we set that question aside. The other ones do rotate, the higher ones. And probably, those things are part of the secrets of initiation. Some different things emerged in the group discussion. And, we have a joke that people are living in their own world, but we say we're living in our own world, WHIRL. And we're modulating always to others. He says some people will have to slow their progress for the sake of others. Some people will have to speed their progress up for the sake of those with whom they find themselves associated, so they're not a drag on the process. All of these are internal rates. And when these modulations and moderations occur, we will be perfecting cooperative living. And it emerges that unless there is rotary adjustment, there will be no spiral cyclic motion. Now you know what spiral cyclic motion is. When you apply ray 1 through ray 3, you get the spiral. Ray 3 keeps on turning, but it's always being moved along, and so a spiral is created. So it's a second-rate type of motion. And at the very least, even if we can't drive forward through space, and even if, people like ourselves can't really celebrate a direct progress onward, we can at least have spiral cyclic motion and return to a similar circumstance, though on a higher turn of the spiral, and with additional perspective in consciousness. And that's what we would call growth. Now, let's put it like this. If you are having your first Saturn return, okay. But by the time you reach your second Saturn return, a spiral should have occurred, and you should be able to see and understand much better than you could at the time of your first Saturn return. And then what if you get to be about 87 years old and you have your third Saturn return? Then your perspective should really be enhanced. So spiral cyclic motion, while not terribly drastic, like progress onward no matter what, ray 1, at least gives you elevated perspective. And some of us, we're in our 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever. And we've had even the second Saturn return, and maybe we know that is true. We can think back and say, what do I know now that I didn't know when I was 28, 29 years old at the first Saturn return? So you have to look at your entire life as a work in progress in which the planets are offering you opportunity to grow in a spiral cyclic manner. We cannot really move together unless we adjust to each other. If we're just going to simply maintain our own rhythm, irrespective of the rhythms of others, without adjustment, then we may be moving just fine, but it won't be cooperative. We won't be able to work with others. So you know how it is. You probably experienced it. Sometimes in the presence of others, you just have to slow down, or you just have to speed up. Some move ahead, he follows after. Some move behind, he sets the pace. He knows he travels not alone, and that's one of the early of the 6 rules of the road. And DK spends a lot of time with group adjustment. He even, those first couple of meditations in discipleship in the New Age, they are all about somehow equilibrizing and sensitizing the group astral body. We just can't be the Lone Ranger in all these things. We have to be, to establish group consciousness, very aware of the different rhythms that are occurring within the group. So rotary adjustment that has been mentioned above, maybe it's an adjustment of a vehicle to another vehicle. Now, I'm making a speculation here. Venus, which is the prime planet of the soul, at least on our Earth, bright Venus is our archetype, our alter ego, our great exemplar, just the way for our planetary logos, just the way our solar angel is the great exemplar for the individual man. So I'm saying that maybe Venus imposes a rhythm, as the soul does, upon the entirety of humanity. Because, the masters, they still do belong to humanity. The master, think of it, is an initiate of the 5th degree, and the soul ray of Venus is what? What ray? 5th ray. And the 5th ray is very helpful in understanding cycles because they are exact. And the 5th ray is a ray of exactitude of mind and the ability to apply that exactitude. So Venus, the 5th ray, the 3rd initiation, some increasing knowledge of cycles, all those things go together. And I can't help but think that Venus will be active when a man becomes a master at the 5th initiation. So maybe, it's called rhythmic entrainment. The idea that you associate with a greater rhythm of some other source, and before you know it, you are going along with that greater rhythm. Your life changes. I remember, working at the Arcane School for 5 years there, and it was pretty strict rhythm about morning meditation, noon meditation, evening meditation. You dropped what you were doing. That's it. You dropped it. And you went right into the meditation. The bell would ring and you went in, and for me, it was a new rhythm. I was not used to being so precise with a morning time, a noon time, and a 5 o'clock time. But the greater rhythm imposed itself upon the lesser rhythm or upon chaos in general. The four races are perhaps related to the rhythms of Venus. How many races have we had here? Lemurian, Atlantean, Aryan, and now the beginning of the sixth root race coming up in a few thousand years. The point is, we could find the rhythms of the different parts of the body. Just have to correct that. Sorry. And also there are rhythms of the different parts of humanity. And these rhythms have to adjust to each other. Otherwise, you just don't have cooperation. And this augurs well for the Aquarian age, because with its Aquarius, with its third ray, definitely has that, and with its fifth ray, the science of cycles is going to come in very strongly. And we're going to know how everybody else is rotating, what rhythm they're responding to. And we'll be able to make the adjustments which will lead, from a technical perspective, to the induction of right human relations. So all of us, Tuya emphasizes this a lot, at a certain point, the elemental turns into the deva. And all of us are like that. And maybe at the fourth initiation, before that, we're more like elementals. And then we get our wings, as it were, at the fourth degree, and then are more like devas when compared to higher beings. Also in Cosmic Fire, we're told that the planes are great spheres. They're not just like pancakes, obviously. And they rotate from east to west, and the rays rotate from north to south, and they make a great design in their rotation. I mean, this divine plan is really occultly artistic. So rotary adjustment occurs that way, when planes and rays are rotating against each other for a particular purpose. So what's the point of this discussion we're having here? It's all about rotary adjustment. And I'll read. First, the internal vitalizing fire. It appears as latent heat, which is the basis of life of the spheroidal cell or atom, either spheroidal cell and atom, or the atom as a spheroidal cell, and of its rotary adjustment to all other cells. So how do we get along? How do we have right human relations? We adjust to each other. And a lot of adjustment has to do with tempo, doesn't it? If someone's racing around and you just can't follow them, I can't follow you, go slower, or when you're learning a new language, same thing. You're speaking that language too fast. If you just speak the words maybe more slowly, I'll be able to follow what you say, and then we can engage, right? So, and Dwayne Carpenter, he's really good at this. He understands these internal geometrical movements relative to each other, and he, as an artist, he draws them out or finds where they are demonstrated in animations, and we get a very good idea. So we have to learn rotary adjustment, adjusting our rhythms, our periods of rotation, to the rhythms and periods of others and of the group as a whole. And DK is telling that to some of his groups. Some of you will have to slow your apparent progress in the interest of group integration. And some of you will just have to get going faster. So I'm saying here, or we all were saying, because basically what I did is I gathered some notes, we all had a discussion, and then I kind of refined the notes and, came up with additional descriptors. We might have to call this type of adjustment harmonic adjustment. I mean, think of an orchestra playing together. When we have a frequency, it's really a complete vibrational rotation. And if we don't get the right frequency, we have discord. So when an orchestra is tuning up, sometimes you don't want to listen to it because they're not there yet. But when they finally respond to that A, the concert master gets up there with his violin and he makes sure his A is attuned to whatever standard is being used by that orchestra, A440, 447, or maybe whatever frequency, and then everybody else tunes to that. So we have here the necessity among that fourth group called humanity, the fourth kingdom, the fourth group of monads, the ray of harmony. We have the necessity of harmonic adjustment. Am I capable of harmonic adjustment when it comes to dealing with others? For the sake of the harmony of the whole, which DK deems more important than just one's own individual self-contained harmony. So some further thoughts is that a chord of music, remember an interval has 2 notes and a chord has at least 3 notes or more. A chord of music is a miniature hierarchy. A chord played in tune represents an harmonious hierarchical relationship of frequencies. And we all know, we can just hear it when the chord is out of tune. And we try to, 3 people get together, they're just on different wavelengths and they're not making beautiful music together, and just try to adjust to each other. And before you know it, something liberating, something beautiful, something exact is sounding. So a chord, which is another symbol for right human relations, is an integrated system. And before integration, you have a lot of, discord, and it's not too pleasant. Plato himself was quite a musician, so some of the music theorists think, and that even a book like The Republic, which was Plato's Utopia, was basically an expansion of music theory from those days. I think I read a book, I don't know if I understood it. It was about Plato, and it was called The Myth of Invariance. It was about his musical system and how some of his writings took their inspiration from that. So it's an integrated system, and you want your vehicles to be sounding in a harmonious way, which has to do perhaps with their frequency of rotation and their degree of refinement. We all know the difference between a pure and beautiful tone and something that's kind of fuzzy and scratchy. So the most important chord for humanity that we find in Letters on Occult Meditation is the bass note of matter, the perfected third of the personality, which is a major third, dum dee instead of dum da. That's the sad third, but the perfected third of the personality is the major. The dominant fifth of the soul, dee-da-da-da-dum, dum bum 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 bum, and the higher note of the monad, the octave, bum 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 bum. DK, being an old Pythagorean, taught us about that in some of the early pages of Letters on Occult Meditation. And the base note of matter is always sounding according to our vibratory level. Now, that note is constantly sounding in our present condition, and probably it has something to do with the base of the spine, and the monadic note has bum bum. The octave has something to do with the crown. All of these analogies fit with each other. And we can go from the study of the centers to the study of music, to the study of planets, to the study of the signs, to the study of the rays, and they will all interweave. But it has a lot to do with this term that we've been looking at called rotary adjustment. Well, the next thing is, what do we do? It's, it's kind of difficult material. What do you do? How do you do it? Do you read straight through and keep going, or do you read and elaborate, but do not explore the elaborations? Or do you read and elaborate and explore the elaboration within a limited time frame? Or do you really follow the elaboration in depth? Well, it's obvious, in the lecture part of these programs, I'm elaborating, and I'm trying to follow them out somewhat in depth, making many tendrils of relationship between what's being read here and what can be illuminatively associated with what's being read here. So that's kind of the method we're using. Okay. Now, I know we don't cover a lot of ground, but let's just get back to what it is we've been studying just for this little bit, just a couple of paragraphs. We've been studying the internal vitalizing fire. Internal vitalizing fire. And we've divided it into 3 and 5. We say there are 3 fires, but there are also 5 fires in manifestation, and the 2 lower fires are the correspondence to the lowest of the 3 fires, fire by friction. So the internal vitalizing fire has to do with fire by friction, the lowest part of it, the lowest part of fire by friction. Every time you've got a triplicity, you actually have a 9-fold system. So 3 sub-aspects of the lower third, 3 sub-aspects of the middle third, and 3 sub-aspects, eventually, of the greater third. And then Shiva is complete. So we've been studying the internal vitalizing fire, and we spent some time on latent heat as the basis of life of the spheroidal cell or atom, either one or the other or equivalent, and this is where we really spent the time, rotary adjustment to all other cells. And we looked at some of the microcosmic correspondences having to do with community, society, right human relations, getting along, making progress together, being in harmony. All these things are based upon mathematical frequencies. So there is a mathematics of right human relations. And there is a mathematics of harmonious social interaction. And there's a mathematics behind a beautifully sounding orchestra. And maybe that's why, as you probably know it, that the fourth ray is called the ray of mathematical exactitude. You wouldn't think it, right? But unless you get the frequencies correct and the cycles correct, because every vibration is a cycle, you know, you're not going to have beauty. So in a sense, ray 5 as a subray works along with ray 4 to produce mathematical exactitude and the sounding out of harmonious beauty. And we've looked at the idea that when you are really, you know, an initiate, well, the whole matter of integration of your personality and with the soul can be technically pursued. And I think out of Germany and Austria and, you know, nations like that, with fourth ray souls and a lot of fifth ray, is going to come a scientific method of integration. Not just a mystical method, but an exact scientific method of integrating the different vehicles and their cycles with each other until the personality of man and his soul and all the rest is really sounding out the way it should, without discord, without unpleasantness, without that, you know, if you're sensitive to music and you hear things played out of tune, it almost hurts, you know. So that's coming along, and it's all based on frequency. Now, next time when we get together, we will talk about prana, which animates all and is the driving force. We did say, since the driving force of the rising sign is noted, this term driving force is going to correspond to the etheric system and to the soul system. Just the way, and I'll make an analogy, just the way the soul drives the personality, so active heat, the etheric, drives latent heat, the dense physical. And we'll get into that the next time. And I'll just transpose our day today is the 16th of October, 2020. And we'll go down here to, you know, we're pretty well studying paragraph by paragraph. So, you know, this is rather in-depth, but I think you'll allow me to say that it's in-depth with ramifications. So this comes up to the 23rd, and it's going to be a evening session. And, whoop, that's not right. We are working in depth with ramifications. I think that is fair to say. Without the ramifications, we would just be strictly studying the method of the fifth ray. And we're doing more than that. We're doing definitely more than that. And what should you be getting out of all of this?
Michael.
Yes, dear. Yeah,
Can
and
I
we're
say
going to
something?
indeed, and that's actually where we are at that point where we're going to begin saying something. So as long as you brought it up. Why don't you do that?
Yeah, I have been just now thinking about all these practical terms. When we think about occultism, it's what is the way of knowing something, and that's why it always takes us into practical level, what it means in our lives, what it means in the life of the group, in the life of humanity, and so forth. And you were mentioning already about the elemental, which is turning deva on the mental plane. And I started to think about what does it mean practically for us. TK talks about that how we are recognized also by our vibrations. He talks about that how it is our responsibility, that our vibrations should be rising during our lives, that we should end into higher vibrational states than we started this life.
Mhm.
And then I was thinking that what is actually helping us raising our energies? What is stopping? One of the very I think shocking things are those that what scientists are reporting, how much our food is affecting us. I just saw yesterday a part of documentary that there was a man who had the second, how do you call that, second diabetes, the diabetes number 2, or how it is called in English.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I know kind of what you
Yeah.
mean. Yeah.
So in 8 weeks, he was able to correct that only by using food differently. We have so much produced food and so much all kinds of ingredients put into food.
Yes, yes.
We
Preservatives and so forth. Yes.
preservatives, right? So, and vibrationally, this is lowering our vibration. So, it is about rotary motion, and so just by starting to change the diet into a more natural way, it immediately, in few weeks, it immediately helps us. And when we direct the thought, what is then the plant kingdom? What is the other kingdoms, but especially plant kingdom, which is related to the soul directly. So that's why it is one of the bases why we need to have the diet, which has a connection to plant kingdom and those plants which have been growing naturally, because we cannot know when we manipulate that, what do we manipulate. Then
Not
I
yet.
was thinking,
Not yet. Yeah.
right, and then I was thinking why humanity is sleeping during the night. So when we think about prana, and during the night it is like the prana of the sun is circulated. It is all the time circulated via the aura of the planet, but especially when the sun has set, the prana from the sun is reduced, and then I think that's why soul puts us to sleep during that time, that we are not we would not use so much about this prana, what is circulated in the aura of the planet. And he says actually that in the third initiation, only then starts the man to take prana directly from the sun. That is the beginning of that into the solar systemic rhythm. But this rhythm, what is related to the night prana and the prana of which is circulating in the aura of the planet, we need that. But then I think that's why humanity should be sleeping. During that time, there is all kinds of purificatory processes going on in the body. So the
Yes.
soul works in the body, that the body is purified also in other levels than on physical.
Yeah. And a
But
very rapid circulation of the blood too begins to occur at night. Part of the
right,
cleansing process. Yes,
right?
yes.
So, but what about our world nowadays? We are up so late. We do not have anymore the rhythm which is in the nature, and it made me think that all these teachings which are pointing out, okay, DK talks about that at 10 o'clock every zone we should be already sleeping. We jeopardize all the time these rules, and in all these teaching of the yogis and sages and holy people, saints, they were waking up in the morning when the
Mhm.
sun is rising, and that made me think now when you were talking about this more different types of
Adjustments. Yeah.
right. And DK says that we should once a day at least address direct our back to the sun. And I think that is one of the ways to adjust in our chakric system and that circulation, that we
Mm.
direct ourselves to the sun. And if we think about the quality of the morning, it is considered in the native tradition, and I always study something about native tradition, because when one think about someone, let's say that it is a baby stage, but in the children we see some kind of natural way of directives within us, which are not too much distorted. And
Mm.
that is, I
Mm.
consider in native tradition that there is a lot of these secrets, how the healthy way is kept going. And
Mm.
that is, there is this that in the morning we should go into the sun and just treat the day very consciously and
Mm.
breathe in what is coming from the sun. And I think there is something about that, how we then can really practical ways can adjust our rotary motions in the morning.
Our rhythms, whole new rhythms are going to be introduced. And the DK, as you know, doesn't say only go to sleep at 10. He says up at 5. So he's got
That's
the
right.
whole. He has the new rhythm all worked out for the students of the esoteric schools. And some of the traditions, maybe the China. I don't know so much about it, but the Chinese tradition. They tell you what hours various meridians
Exactly.
are activated and so forth.
So that was my next point, that what I was coming up to, that it is when we think about the last steps of the ladders, it does not matter when we have a huge amount to adjust, but the more refined we become, the more accurate we have to come in all levels. And the knowledge of these laws, which are directing the energies in that related to that location that we are. One is about that to adjust us back to those rhythms that we go along how the
Yeah,
sun is
yeah,
moving,
yeah,
because
yeah,
it certainly affects, and also the food, because if the food can change so quickly in us, because when we think about humanity in the West is very sick.
yeah, yeah.
And
That's true.
that is a sad story, because then the body cannot be carrying the weight of the light which is coming from the soul. So
Yeah,
these were my thoughts about practical things, about think about the food, and then also our rhythm of the day, how
yeah,
to higher the energies and
yeah.
adjust
Raise,
our
raise them up. It's going to be an age of rhythm. There's no question about it. That seventh race cycle that is accompanying Aquarius for 2,500 years approximately is just going to introduce an entirely new way of rhythmic living, and the emphasis will switch from the dense physical where it is right now onto the etheric, and there's going to be a whole etheric rhythmic cultivation going on during these next 2,000 years. So and DK says we're going to have much more as a result resilient and vital bodies because of these changes. And the
Right.
seventh ray will introduce this. Meanwhile, we're in the rajasic, chaotic state. It's not exactly tamasic. It's just go, 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 you know? And that comes in before sattva becomes possible. But we're going into a more sattvic stage in terms of the three gunas, you know. So, you know, we have a number of lives to be lived under the Aquarian seventh ray dispensation, and we will emerge in a much healthier condition at the end of it all. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. Yeah.
thank
Thank you for
you.
your, yeah. Thank you for those. Okay, Michael, are there thoughts from group members?
Yes, we will get to Vera after addressing a question that Roz posted a while back. And she wrote, would the rotation speed up after initiation?
I believe so. That I was trying to kind of hint at that is what I would call a tightening spiral. You know, there was this big thing about 2012, you know, it was all kind of hyped, but the end of the Mayan calendar and all that. But the idea was that toward the end, much more is accomplished in the last short period than was accomplished even before over much longer periods. So yes, when you look at the egoic lotus, the earlier petals, very slow unfoldment, then faster and faster and faster and faster, until when you get to the synthesis petals, they all burst open at once, and they don't just like take their time over millions of years each. So the tightening spiral is there as initiation proceeds. Now, you know, we don't know the cycles, but it's possible. What did he say? That the initiate becomes the master of time, and then very practically, he says, and can accomplish very much in a short period of time compared to what a normal human being accomplishes in a longer period of time. So something is increasing its cycle, the rapidity of the cycle. Now, whether this corresponds with a subtle body rotating faster, this remains to be seen. It is a speculation, and I think there's no question that these spherical or ovoidal vehicles of a subtle nature are definitely changing their velocity. So, you know, let's just, when we begin to detect these things scientifically, we'll be able to measure that. And initiation is the adding of a lot of energy into the system which wasn't there before. Or maybe it confirms the energy that you've managed to acquire and then stabilizes it. That's another way of looking at it. And with greater initiations, greater mastery of time, greater rapidity of rotation, and greater accomplishment in a shorter period of time, all these are to be expected. Yeah.
Okay, Vera, please unmute yourself.
Yeah.
There you go.
The rotary adjustment, and if the rotary adjustment applies to not only to the physical body, but also how we act in the group and group dynamics, what about the law of repulse? And I was thinking, would the latent heat apply more, or is connected more to rotary adjustment, and active heat to law of repulse? Because the on the third subplane is initially the causal lotus. So am I thinking?
Okay, well, I just want to, the law, the law of repulse, fourth law of the soul, involves a number of levels. It involves the entire personality and the development of the soul as well. We are in certain soul groups that have accomplished approximately similar things. And we don't only repulse on the outer plane, and I think you're basically saying that we repulse inwardly as well, those factors which do not allow us to proceed with soul culture.
Yes.
And then later we reclaim what we repulse. So and one more thing occurred to me, that the etheric body carries so many energies from the higher principles, and the physical body basically does not. It's not a principled area. It's just an aggregation. It's a congestion in time and space. So the etheric body has in it, circulating, all those qualities that we have already developed. And on the basis of our quality, as it's manifesting in the etheric body, repulsion will occur of others and of experiences that we should avoid. Well, you know, we have a lot of old sayings like that. You know, we some of them are unpleasant, but you know, if you lie down with pigs, don't expect to come up smelling like roses, you know. So the whole idea is, who are our associates?
Yes.
Now, the Tibetan says, choose your associates wisely and do not hold fraternity with those people who, at least in the beginning, will drag you down unless you're on some kind of redemptive mission and you have already a lot of stability in the higher energy. So the whole etheric body holds all of our internal qualities, and on the basis of those eternal qualities, we repulse or we attract. The physical body doesn't hold those so much, but of course there will be effects because the etheric body is driving the physical body, and you're going to see it, that a more refined ether will result in a more refined outer form. And by the way, at the end of Letters on Occult Meditation, he really goes into purification a lot. Now, remember, that was written 100 years ago, and it wasn't necessarily anticipated that there would be a Second World War, and the Christ maybe would have even returned in the 20th century and so forth. So he gives some very basic things there that we just have to observe in order to have the purity which will give us the right kind of magnetism to attract those we should attract and probably repel those that we should not attract. There is a kind of a law of attraction, and you should add to it and repulsion.
Yes.
In other words, we call it law of attraction, but it's really the law of attraction and repulsion. So the etheric body, yes, and it's more than ether. It's a combination of many things that come through it, and the physical body, not so much.
Thank you. So great wisdom is required to see what is what and where we are. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and we know that Master DK knows what is what. Knows what.
Yeah.
And we're so grateful for that. You know, really, what a teacher. Okay.
Okay, in response to Tuya's thing about diabetes, Tia identifies that type as diabetes mellitus.
Okay, is that type 2 diabetes? Is that it? The mellitus, is that it?
I'm not sure. But Anne Veronica writes, we also repulse lower matter in our bodies and attract higher matter.
Yeah, the ohm will do it, properly sounded. The idea of expulsion and attraction through the use of the sacred word. So so it's not just other people, it's other states, it's other vibratory states, and basically it's what is already built in, expelled if it no longer serves, and new vibrational energy force, matter, attracted in to heighten the basic frequency of the individual in whatever vehicle. So that's a very important point, and Veronica, about the matter of the vehicles, yes. And of course, that applies not just to the physical and etheric, doesn't it? I mean, he tells us no one of us should have matter of the sixth and seventh subplane in our astral body. And then he goes on to tell us that the hell of the average believer, and I guess he means Christian believer, is found on the seventh subplane of the astral plane. So naturally, we just don't want to have that kind of matter in our astral vehicle. And yet, if you look at the book of Revelation and the appearance of some very unpleasant things walking the earth, that is precisely what is said to happen. And I've seen some musicians, I don't know if I should even call them that, because they're more like howling beasts, and I really mean literally that are channeling through those demonic levels. But maybe they call it satanic rock or something like that. I mean, you look at it and say, oh, turn that one off. Or if you can just bear it, just look closely and see what's really going on. But those lower levels are being brought through. Those are the levels of demons, entities, obsessions, possessions, all of that kind of thing. So cast out, cast out, cast out, you see. We have to be able to do that through the sacred word or whatever other means there are. And there are plenty of means of doing that. It's not just the sacred word. Yeah.
And then Tia clarified that diabetes mellitus is type 2 and type 1 is diabetes insipidus.
Okay. Thank you, Tia, for the people who are really, getting into the esoteric healing. Interesting how he said, that you'll have these healing teams, and it's not that the conventional doctors, with all their enhanced skills, will be not a part of it anymore, but it's just that the esoteric people will be a part of the team. And all together, they'll have a cooperative approach, which will really help the individual. And color and sound will be among the first areas of the first methods that the subtle healing will start really operating. So thank you on that clarification.
And Veronica continues, could we say the etheric body is more harmoniously and geometrically built by the devas? That's first, and then going on, does Om attract higher matter, and Aum, what does it do?
Well,
OM
it
versus
depends.
AUM.
Depends on who you consult. DK pretty well says that the AUM has the effect of a strong wind pinning a man against the wall. And that we should be using the Om and not the Aum, which is a more material sound which imprisons rather than liberates. But in another sense, the great Brahmic word is AUM. Of course, if it's Brahma, it has to do with material precipitation. So I think we're safest just staying with the OM until we know better about how to distinguish two types of use of the AUM, because there's a great generality involved with AUM, which is not necessarily negative. And maybe it has something to do with whether there are, in the raise initiations, I don't know what page it's on. Is it rule 3? He gives you a bunch of diagrams. I don't know who could find that. But he starts with a diagram that is basically AUM, and it's rather complicated, and then it all boils down eventually to a little dot after a progression. Until we know more, I would just say stick with the OM, and it will expel and attract accordingly. Now let's see, there was another part to the question, wasn't there, Michael? I'm missing
Michael,
something. Yeah, go ahead, dear. Go on. Yeah.
yeah, if I, while you are thinking about the responding few things to that question, OM, AUM, AUM, we can think this way also, that because the AUM is the primal sound for the creation. And that's why when we create anything, we have to have a higher consciousness that we can create according to the plan, according to the law. That's why when we think about present humanity, we have the challenge now to start to emphasize more mental nature. So we are coming out of the matter, and that's why that is one way of thinking why OM for us is so important, because we now try to reach the realms of the soul, and it is said that it is the sacred sound for this present time. And then about etheric body and the geometrical patterns in it, that's true that it's the etheric body, when we think about that ideal etheric body, is very geometrically beautifully organized. But when we think about the when humanity learned and became selfish, so all these desires which is directing our way of being and the purpose, or these where we are trying to reach to, they all affect also this very unconscious level of lives, which are elementals. And that's why also the etheric body can be totally distorted, the way that it does not have these holy patterns anymore. It is not following the soul, but it is messed up. And to that is based then, for instance, when people are using heavy narcotics. So these kinds of things are destroying these energetic patterns, which are not anymore relating to these higher, beautiful geometrical patterns.
Yeah, the ideal is one thing, and then the conditions we can get ourselves into is another. And here you see what I was talking about, right? And this is the study of Rule 2, and you see how the AUM is portrayed on the left circle, and the design that is connected with it, which is it has a lot of similarity to the design that Hodgson used for the fourth ray. Then the M, next one, is quite big. The matter aspect is quite big, but you're on your way to the ohm. And finally, there is a great reduction in the M until it becomes tiny, and that is an ohm as well. And then you're left finally with a point. And if I were to add one more circle, it would be a circle without a point, because it would be called, as in Leo, the relinquished point, which is a high state in Leo, where basically your center is everywhere and your circumference is nowhere. The definition of God, Pascal. What is it called? God is an intelligible sphere whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere, or perimeter, something of that nature. So now this is one of the progressions from AUM to OM. And in this, the AUM itself, or the word made flesh, this creates finally a point of tension in the fourth kingdom of nature, and at which point the evolutionary cycle becomes possible, and the first dim note of the OM can be heard. And in the individual man, this point is reached when the personality is integrated and functioning whole, and the soul is beginning to control it. And it is an accumulative tension arrived at through many lives. This process is expressed in this way. Okay, so this page, whatever page it is, I hope I can see the page. Study this, page 55. You can, the word sonat sums to 55, so you can remember it. Now, if we go to A Treatise on Cosmic Fire, there's
But
another place.
Michael, if you back up to page 52,
Yeah.
It starts 3 points of the aum, the om, and the sound.
Yeah, exactly. The O, just the O alone. That's another important one. So that's important. 51, 52. The lost chord. That's a famous song, Victorian song by Arthur Sullivan, and a wonderful song. And it describes a lot about masonry and
Go
how
down
we've
just a
lost
little more.
the real sound. Yeah. Well, anyway, study this part. Yes. And I want to show you a more obscure reference. So go from 52 or 51 to the place where I took you a minute ago, there. And of course, we do study that. And by the way, there's a lot of, on Makara, I've done a lot of commentary on all this stuff, written commentary. So if you want to dig that out for rule number 2, you'll find more detailed information. And now, if I look up, this is something too he was talking about a bit more, love song. You got to know where you're going here. Here is the sound going all the way down to the Book of Life, through the love song, through the logoic phrase, and here it begins up here. Notice it begins with an A on page 926, the ah sound. And I wonder, mantric sound. Okay, there's a lot about mantrams here. Okay, that's good. And but you can read that. Then it goes to AU, which is connected with the monadic plane. Then it goes to AUM, the logoic triple word. Now it is a manifestational word. So even though we do not use the AUM in a practical sense, because he says it's like the strong wind pinning you against the wall, and it rather enslaves you, we use the OM, but in the larger creative process, right here on page 926, you can follow it all the way down from the logoic sea of fire with the A, descending plane by plane through the word and the phrase and the love song and the chapter with 49, the book with 49 chapters, all the way down to page 928. And this is the whole history of form as generated through sound. So, will we ever get there to study this? Well, we just remember where it is, page 51 through 53 or so in Rays and Initiations, and page 926 to 929 in A Treatise on Cosmic Fire. And these are the pages that have to do with the relationship of sound to form and to liberation from form. See, in one way, if we go back to the earlier book, the sound itself is the O, not the OM. It has to do with the monadic plane, but so does the AU have to do with the monadic plane, and we have to learn the different ways that those two configurations are related to the monadic plane. And when it comes to the AUM, well, that is Brahma, and as far as we're concerned, it's the atmic plane, a very high plane, but from the macrocosmic point of view, form precipitation has begun through sound. So those two series of pages are worth the study, and take them down, make note of them so you can read there. And of course, my plug for the Alice Bailey CD-ROM, you may not have all 24 books, lined up there, but if you have the Alice Bailey CD-ROM, you have it, and you can go fast. Okay.
Going back to the first thing from Anne Veronica, could we say the etheric body is more harmoniously and geometrically built by the devas?
I think Tuya kind of answered that one. It is a principled vehicle. And if the lower devas, by the way, he always distinguishes between the elementals and lower devas as one group, and the devas equivalent to man and above man, he adds them to that. So the etheric body ideally has a perfect geometry, but it doesn't yet. And all these triangles and lines of connection, which one day will be the case, are not yet the case because of where we stand. And corruption is also possible. So that disease results from the condition of the etheric body as it is now. But eventually it will be a perfect reflection as a body of fire of the soul. And in Cosmic Fire on page, it's between 66 and 69, and we're going to be coming to that, is the story given. So Treatise of Cosmic Fire, and let's see if I can, here we have, is that it? Am I in the right place? I think so.
Michael, can I answer while you are seeking?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, we have to distinguish two things, that the etheric body is built by these lower forces or lower lives, which are unconscious. There are two parts of it. One is about the part of how the prana is brought in, and then the part of it how that whole vehicle is built upon. And yes, devas would build harmonious if we are aligned with these harmonious forces, because we are talking about unconscious lives, which are just like the servers of that empowering either impulse from the emotional body or impulse from the mental body in two different aspects. And then also what kind of substance we put into our body while we are drinking or we are eating. So that's why these devas cannot actually help us if we do not create the conditions to be helped. So that's why it is so important to keep our higher minds and our intention into the life of the soul, so that we can invoke those builders within us. And let's say that our last incarnation was really screwed up. We were using everything wrongly. So we have a huge karmic debt to pay in building sense. So we do not have functional body.
Yeah.
So
rebuilding
then we
even. Yeah.
yes, then we have
Yeah.
to rebuild again and put these new types of substances in Devic world into our etheric body. But there is something interesting what I wanted to point out earlier too, that the trees were called initiates. And I think Blavatsky also is pointing out, and I think it is a Druidic tradition. And I have been thinking this for years. But then while you were talking, Michael, about these adjustments and the rotary motion and the spiral motion, I was understanding something that is something what happens to us what we don't know when we go into the forest, that trees and the presence in the deva of the tree adjusts the same way like we were talking about the sun and the food, but there is very deep relationship with us and with the trees. Just to study that.
Yeah, yeah. Certain of the initiates were called trees, and it's worth reading about who they were. I subtracted 100 pages. It's page 166 and 167, and here is the perfected etheric body. The centers, therefore, when functioning properly, finally, form the body of fire, which eventually is all that is left, first to man in the three worlds and later to the monad. This body of fire is the body incorruptible or indestructible, spoken of by St. Paul, and is the product of evolution, of the perfect blending of the three fires, which ultimately destroy the form. When the form is destroyed, there is left this intangible spiritual body of fire, one pure flame, distinguished by 7 brilliant centers of intenser burning. This electric fire is the result of bringing together of the two poles and demonstrates at the moment of complete at-one-ment the occult truth of the words, our God is a consuming fire. So this is the final perfection of the building, which the lower devas properly guided will produce. And this is a consummation in which some kind of etheric body called now the body of fire does remain in its perfection. We're running out of time, so we have to, and there's a lot of questioning, I think, looks like.
Well, Tia wrote, I very much enjoyed the musical key to right human relations discussed tonight. Powerful, evocative image, and thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tia. Yeah, I mean, just combine all these different keys to the secret doctrine, and in the overlap between them, a lot of light can appear. And this is the one I was just reading from. I realized that I had turned there, and page 166 and 167 about the body of fire. And, if we're going to get into the new esoteric schools when they come about in truth, we're going to have to know, as we had to know, or some had to know in the old days, music and mathematics. I mean, it doesn't mean you have to be a higher mathematician, but there are certain things about frequency and mathematics and music which these schools, largely under the direction of Master Kutumi, at least when they are second-rate schools, will demand that kind of knowledge. And the analogy of the universe to being music will be one of those analogies that is strongly promoted and discussed. Okay.
And perhaps the last written comment from Roz. Perhaps the ancients knew we are linked with trees. The Druids believed humans came from trees. There is an old painting of Adonis being birthed from a tree.
Yes, yes, that's true. And there's another side to it, though, because sometimes, now, I'm going to need to be corrected if I'm incorrect, but I recall that the initiates on the dark side were called trees. Now, it's kind of interesting in The Lord of the Rings and in the film, what were they called? Ents, E-N-T-S, or something like that. The trees
Yes,
came,
and
the trees came to life, right? And they were good. They were good trees. But apparently, one of the terms for these giants that were sorcerers and all the rest of it, they were called the trees. So we'll have to check on the moral quality of the trees representing what kind of initiates, or maybe both. But
Michael, I
yep,
think that is related to the earlier solar system, but we are not going to go into that. I just wanted to point to Rose that there is also this in the early Christianity, Mary is drawn into the tree or into the bush, and it relates us to the tree of life. But that is another discussion, but interesting.
oh, that's interesting. And then, of course, we have the Moses on the Mount of Transfiguration dealing with the burning bush. It's not a tree, but it's getting close. So yeah, we can do some scholarly research on how that term may be used, but we can imagine that among the Druids, it would be a very positive symbol. Okay, friends, is that it then, Michael? Are we at the point?
Yes, we are at that point.
And have we pretty much covered everything?
Yes, we have.
Okay, well, then that's good.
Other than showing the great invocation on your screen.
Oh, okay. I just meant, the comments. So, yeah. Good. Well, then we coming up to the right approach. Okay, and anyway, study those sections in Raise and the Initiations around, what was it, 51, 52, 53, 54, and then in A Treatise on Cosmic Fire, these pages here, rather, what was it, 926 to 929, and then these pages about the body of fire and the perfection of the lower mechanism. Okay. All right, friends, here we go. And now just reminding, at 1 o'clock today, which is 4 o'clock our time in Finland, we have the Esoteric United Nations. And if you've been hearing about it and are not a member of it, you can come in. I mean, everybody eventually, has to take a pledge. They'll stick with it. But if you want to see what we're doing, you're welcome to come at least one time without taking that pledge. And Michael, the link for that, is that on the weekly schedule?
The link is on the weekly schedule, yes.
Okay, Michael provides those weekly schedules, which is such a help. Very good. And then the new moon at what did I say? Or did you say 6:30 GMT?
The new moon meditation begins at 6:30 p.m. GMT. The link for that is also on the weekly schedule.
Oh, it's nice to have everything in the same place. Okay. And where else can they get that weekly schedule if they have lost it in their email? Is it on Makara at all?
It might be on the MoriaFederation.com website.
Okay. Okay. So the great invocation. From the point of light within the mind of God, Let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Oh. Thank you, friends, and maybe we'll see some of you a little later, and lots of love and blessings from all of us on the communications group. And I'll kind of turn off the recording here, and Michael will help us leave the program. So, yeah, many blessings, everybody.